name's Dave, and this is part 6 of the series on methods, the final part. So we're going to wrap up the series on methods, and in this video I want to introduce you to a couple of new keywords. And the first one is going to be REF. REF means reference. It's just short for reference, and this is a way that we can pass by reference. Up to now we've been passing by value. We're passing by value. So let's say we pass a string to a method like we've been doing, and that string value will get C# will make a copy. It's going to make a copy of that string value and then assign it to the input parameter box, right? So it makes a copy of the value and then assigns it to the parameter. So if we make any changes to that value within the method, it's not going to change the value that we pass to it. That's still going to stay the same because it's a copy. The parameter has a copy of the value, right? But what if we don't want a copy? Most of the time that is what we want. Most of the time we want to pass by value. Most of the time we want to pass by value, but occasionally you may want to pass by reference. And if you pass by reference, then basically it's not making a copy. So if you pass it a string, it's not going to make a copy of that. It's going to be the same string. So if you make any changes within the code block, within the method, it's also going to change the value of what's outside. If you have a variable, it's going to change that variable. So let's take a look at this example. So I have this method. This is an overload of the other swap method we have, and my parameter names are A and B, which is really bad practice. You shouldn't do that. You want to use descriptive names. We'll go with that for now, just an example. So I have the REF keyword, and I have to have the REF keyword that tells C# we want to pass by reference. We don't want to make a copy of the value and put it in the parameter box. We want to pass by reference, right? So we have two strings, the same as before, string, and then the parameter name is A and this one's B. So we got to pass it two strings, right? And this is the swap method. So this algorithm here, this little algorithm, is exactly the same as what we've seen before. We got a temp, temporary box, temporary variable. Assign this A to that, and then B to A, and then temp to B, right? So the same thing we've seen before. The difference here is that we're using reference. We're passing by reference. Right? So okay, so here we're calling. We're going to call this method right here, actually. We're going to first create two variables. Right, so I have my two variables, value 1, value 2. The first one I assign it the string, pin, right, and pin and teller. So, and then the value 2 variable, and the box variable, I'm going to assign this string teller, right. So these are the two values I'm going to pass to the method. And note that I have to use the REF keyword here when I'm passing these variables. When I'm passing the arguments, when I'm putting the arguments in here, when I'm calling the method, I also have to use the REF. So we have to use it in both places, right? We got to use it in both places. We got to use that REF keyword in both places when we're calling the method and in the parameter signature. It's got to be in both places, right? So the REF says pass this value by reference, right? So the implications of that is any changes made within this method are going to change this, which is outside of the method, right? And most of the time that's not what you want. But if it is what you want, then you would have to use the REF keyword, right? So let's see what happens here. We're going to call this method. We're going to pass it these two values by reference, and this is going to swap them within the method. It's going to swap them within the method, but that's also going to update these two variables, right? These two variables. So value 1 now holds the string pin. Value 2 now holds the string teller. So after we run this method, it's going to swap, right? We're going to swap them around. So let's go ahead and run this, and we're going to write this to the output window. And so let's go to the output window, and there you go. So teller, pin. Remember the pin was first and then teller, but it swapped them around. So it did the switcheroo, right? So let's go ahead. Let's put a breaking point right here, or you can press F9. Either way, we got to stop the debugger first. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Alright, so you can see value 1 has a string pin, value 2 has a string teller. Alright, and we will step into the method, and so we pass it. So same as before, we have this, but the difference is this is not a copy. This isn't a copy of this. This is the same. It's the same value, right? It's referencing the same place in the computer's memory. This is the same storage location, right? The same location in the memory. It's referencing the exact same thing, right? So if we make any changes to this here, it's also going to change it here, right? And that's not true, and that's not the case unless you use that REF keyword, right? So you want to make sure that's what you want. Is that, if it's not what you want, it could jack up your program. So you want to make sure that's what you want. But if it is, then you use that REF keyword. The vast majority of the times, that's not what you want. But if it is, just use the REF keyword. And any changes made here are also going to change the values here, right? You're going to update these values. So let's keep going. And now we can see value 1 holds teller, right? Value 2 holds pin, so it's swapped it here, right? We changed it here within the method's code block, but it changed these variables, right? It changed these even though it's outside the method. And that's what the REF does. That's what this REF keyword does. It's got to be in both places when you call the method and in the parameter signature, right? Okay, so let's use the REF keyword to redo our little program that swaps, which you type something in this text box and this text box, and we swap them around. Let's do that again, but this time let's use the REF keyword. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. And note that I've commented out but what we had before, so it won't execute. So I have all this other code commented out. Okay, so I've got, I'm accessing the text property on this text box like we've done before. I'm assigning it to this string variable that holds a string, value 1. Same thing here with text box 2, right? So I have two variables, and I'm passing by reference these two variables, right? I'm calling the swap method, and I'm using the REF keyword. So this says pass by reference, right? So it's going to update these variables outside of the method, right? And basically what's happening is this variable is referencing, I know I keep saying it's a box, but actually this is where the analogy of the box kind of breaks down a little bit. That's not technically accurate for some types, for most types, but it's a good way of thinking about it. But technically what's happening is the variable, this variable, and the parameter, once it gets assigned to the parameter, both of these both the variable and the parameter are referencing a spot in the computer's memory, and they're referencing that exact same spot. So if you update it here, it's going to update it here, because it's the same thing, right? That's what happens when you pass by reference. But don't worry too much about that right now. The box analogy is great. It's a great way to think of it. So value 1, that's and value 2, these are two variables we're passing. Both of these get assigned to these parameters, but they're both going to be referencing the exact same value. So if we update it here, it's also going to update it outside the method. That's the important thing to come away with this. Whenever you use the REF keyword, you're saying pass by reference, which means if you update the variable inside this method, then it's also going to update it outside the method. That's a big difference. And most of the time you don't want to. Most of the time you want to pass by value. But okay, so we're going to call this method, right? We can pass it these two values. We're going to swap it around, swap the values, and then we're going to reassign to our text properties, right? So let's take a look at this. And I recommend pausing, typing this in. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so type something here in both text boxes and it should swap around, right? So I'm just going to swap them around. And there you go. It's a little bit more dynamic way, I guess, of doing the same thing. Okay, so the next keyword I want to introduce you to is the out keyword. The out keyword. Very similar to the REF, very similar, pretty much the same thing. The difference is you don't have to initialize, you don't have to give the value, the variables an initial value. You do with the REF. With the out, you don't have to give the variables an initial value. And note too that you can use, if you want to declare multiple variables and you're not giving them an initial value, you can use the comma. Actually, you could give them an initial value, but I believe you could do that like this. That would work too. Or not, we're getting the red squiggly. I've actually never done that. I really don't recommend doing that. You'd want it on multiple lines anyway. But if you're declaring multiple variables and you're not giving them an initial value, you could just do it like this, separate them with a comma, that's fine. If you are giving them an initial value, you want it to be on multiple lines anyway, so to make it clear. So I have two variables and I'm not initializing, I'm not giving them an initial value, they just have the default value, which is 0 because it's the int. So I have two different variables separated by a comma, and they're both of int type, right? That's the data type. So the out that's a good way to get, if you want to get multiple values from a method. The out keyword is a good way to do that. You would first declare the methods outside before you call the method, and you don't have to give them an initial value. And when you pass it, you're passing it by reference, just like with the REF, you're passing it by reference. But the difference is you don't have to initialize, you don't have to give these an initial value. And when these values are updated in the method, they're also updated here, just like with the REF, right? So we're calling the method here, and again we have to use the keyword here and here in the parameter signature, as well as when we call the method. All right, we have to use that out keyword in both places, right? So we're giving them these, we're passing these variables to the method, and what this method does is just gets random numbers and assigns it to these parameters, right? When these parameters get updated, when we assign a value to the parameters, it also updates these, right? Even though it's outside of the method, right? We're referencing the same memory location. So if we change it here, it's going to update it here too, right? So, and then here we're just convert whatever we get back, whatever these two variables get assigned. It's going to be integers, so we have to convert it to a string and then assign it to the text property on those on the text, right? On the text boxes, right? The text property on the text boxes. So we're going to get random values and assign them to these text properties. Let's go ahead and run this. And click go. I should get a random number in each box. And there we go. We get a random number. And there we go. So, and you see this one is a random number up to but not including that number. And this is a smaller number. So it's just getting a random number and assigning it to these parameters. But at the same time, and I'm not returning, I don't have to return anything because I'm using the out keyword, right? and I'm updating the variables here. I update them here, update the parameters, but because I'm passing by reference using the out keyword, I'm also updating it here, right? So that's the out keyword. It's probably not something you're going to use a lot, but if you're ever in a situation where you want to get multiple values from a method, this is probably the way to go. It's a good way to do it. There are other ways, but this is a good way to do it. Use the out method. So the ref method means you pass by reference, and you do have to give the variable an initial value. Whatever you're passing has to have an initial value. The out keyword, pretty much the same thing. You're passing by reference. The difference is you don't need to give your variables an initial value, right? But in both cases, you're passing by reference. Passing by reference, which means that the method is not going to create a copy of the value. It doesn't create a copy of the value, right? Generally, usually it creates a copy of the value, creates a copy of the value, but if you're using the ref and out, it's not going to create a copy. It's going to use that same value, right? It's going to reference that same memory location. So if you make an update within the method, it's also going to update your variables outside the method, right? Big difference, critical difference. So that's the ref and out keywords. Okay, just one last thing, and we will wrap this series on methods up. Okay, so just the return keyword. We've seen that it can return a value, right? We've whatever return type we've declared here, we can return that value using the return keyword. But you can also use the return keyword to stop the method if you just want to kill the method. And I use this a lot. I just want to kill the method. I just want to stop it, right? So look at this. I've created this method, return demo. The parameter takes an int, parameter name's number, doesn't return anything. And by the way, if you do have a return type, then the return has to return whatever that value is, right? Has to return whatever that is. So with this, we don't have a return type. And so what this says is if this number, whatever's in this input parameter box, right? If it's greater than 1,000, then just kill the method. Just return nothing, and just stop the method. So this just says stop the method. So just stop it. Just kill the method, right? If the number is less than 1,000, otherwise, then we're going to throw up this message box that just displays the number. So I'm going to call this method, right? And first I'm going to put in 99. So let's go ahead and we'll put a breaking point in there. So we're calling the method, and this number is 99, right? Made a copy of that, right? Made a copy, and put it in this input parameter box. Here we're passing by value now. We're back to passing by value. So if we update that here, it's not going to update it. Well, actually, it's a string literal here, but it's not going to update it out here. And the number is 99, which is of course not greater than 1,000. That's false. So now it's going to go to the else, and it's going to display that message box with the number. All right. So let's try this again, and this time let's do a variable, and this time it'd be 1001, right? 1001. Copy. Control C, Control V. I forgot to stop the debugging again. Alright, now Control C, Control V. Alright, so now let's set the breaking point again. Okay, set the breaking point again. And let's go ahead and run it. Alright, so now we passed the value 1001. 1001 is indeed greater than 1000, so this conditional test is true. So it's going to execute what's in this block, and it's going to execute this statement, the return statement, which just says kill the the method. Actually, in this case, the method would end anyway, but just to demonstrate what that does, this comes in handy. I've used it quite a few times to just want to stop the method. If a certain condition is true, just go ahead and just kill the method, right? So let's go ahead and run it, and you can see it just stopped the method, right? It just went straight to the end. So this just kills the method. The return statement, you can use it to return a value, but you can also use it to just stop the method. So that's it. That's the end of part 6, and that's the end of the series on methods. Kudos for hanging in there under this long series, and I'll see you in the next video.